Everybody's all settled in. We're going to start the program. Thank you for coming today. I appreciate it. So welcome to the 2024 presentation of Elder Law. In United States, May is Elder Law Month, so that's why we contribute this whole presentation to Elder Law and what's going on for the seniors and also preparing to be a senior. So what is Elder Law? Elder Law is legal life planning focused on seniors and includes a range of services. That couldn't be more evasive than anything, right? Well, it includes a lot of things, not only your goals and how we're going to get to your goals with particular documents and also financial planning. So our guest today is Matt Antonellis. He is part of a very well-known Walpole family, Jim Brady and his family. He's his son-in-law. So you can tell that he definitely knows what he's doing because Jim wouldn't allow it if not. Matt is very well versed in financial planning, wealth management, and also he's going to help us and get informed about Social Security and any other questions that you have right now. He's a private wealth advisor with City Square Wealth Management. Matt specializes in retirement planning, specifically customizing investment and tax-efficient strategies for individuals approaching or in retirement. He also focuses on Social Security, optimizing financial security in later years of life and beyond. You can also obtain Matt's information over on that table, but of course, everyone knows how to find me. If you ever need to reach out to Matt, I'd be more than happy to connect you. Now, before we start our actual program, we always just want to remember that the information provided in this presentation is for purposes not to be relied on. You do have to have your professionals in order to assist you, particularly because everyone in this room has different situations going on. So today I'm going to pass this over to Matt. And what we're going to do also is if you have any questions, I will come to you with a microphone. If you could please be patient and wait for me to get to you because this is being recorded and it will be on Walpole Television. Thank you, Matt.
Thank you, Joanne. Thank you very much. Thanks for having me. Obviously, here for a very important cause. I just want to take a couple minutes and really try to echo some of the things that Joanne's going to walk through on the estate planning side and really just protecting your legacy for now, for next year, for the next generation. And so, I appreciate the connection to Jim. Jim is obviously a wonderful person. He's a stalwart in the community, and so happy to be here and be part of this. You know, when I think about how we help folks, clients, we really work on not only figuring out the right strategy for investments and making sure that that's being optimized, but also making sure that you're taking advantage of the tax vehicles available to you so that everybody here talks about the word diversification, making sure that you're diversifying within those vehicles. And I'll walk you through in a minute what that means, how that plays into Social Security, how that plays into Medicare, because everybody in this room either is trying to figure out or is currently experiencing how to recreate your paycheck on what you were currently or previously receiving in while you were still working. So that's obviously a pretty big challenge when you don't necessarily know where to start. They don't teach this in school. I think we would all agree. That's why we're here. That's why we have folks like Joanne to be able to guide us in this space. And so I'll walk you through just for a couple minutes. I know there's a handout here. There's a ton of information on here. So we're only going to talk at a high level about that. I want it to be interactive. So certainly if there are questions, I think Joanne's going to walk around the room and try to facilitate that. But again, I want it to be all tied in to what Joanne's going to walk us through. So I should be able to stick around after for a couple minutes. I would echo what Joanne said around everybody's situation is different. So if there are questions around Social Security, questions around Medicare, questions around investments, everybody's going to have a different game plan just because everybody's situation is different. So while we talk about kind of where we start, I want to start by educating on really the three areas that you can have money in. And I promise you, everybody in this room has them in these three buckets. The first is going to be the non-retirement space. That could be your CDs, your checking account, your savings account, your brokerage account. The way that taxation works there, money that goes into those buckets has been taxed. You have to pay taxes year over year. And then if you sell that asset for more than you paid for it, you get whacked again in the form of capital gains. I think everybody probably knows that. If it sounds like a raw deal, in some ways it is, right? We want to make sure that we're mitigating that because you're technically taxed 3 different times. Now, that's not as bad as it seems in all situations, because what we try to think about with folks is if your income is under a certain threshold, you could have a capital gains rate that's 0. And that's pretty compelling for folks that want to mitigate their taxes. They want to make sure that they're preserving their wealth, because that could tack on years to your overall net worth. So we want to make sure that not only are you maximizing that bucket, but you're drawing upon it appropriately, which again is going to be different for everybody. So that's bucket 1. Bucket 2 is going to be what I'll call the pre-tax vehicle. I would venture to say that most folks have a majority of their assets in this vehicle. That would be the 401ks, the 403bs, the IRAs, the pensions. All of that money is pre-tax, meaning you've never paid taxes on those dollars until you take them out. When you do take them out, you're going to get taxed on every dollar that comes out. I think that's probably not a surprise to anybody here. Now, why is that important, especially as it pertains to Social Security, Medicare? It actually makes a huge difference. How much you take out of that account predicates how much your Social Security is taxed, how much you could pay in a Medicare premium. And what I mean by that is, and again, if this is a refresher, I'm happy to do it, but basically up to 85% of your Social Security could be taxable. Depending on how much you take out, that could be a dollar for dollar increase, not only in your tax rate, but also on your Social Security tax. So you want to be really mindful about that. So we've got that. You've got added, you could add to your Medicare surcharge. It's called IRMA, Income Related Medical Adjustment Amount. All of things that when you tack on what I hope is a long, healthy retirement, month over month, it makes a big difference. So we want to make sure that we're controlling how much comes out of that pre-tax bucket. And then the last thing is, as again, some of you may already be experiencing, you have to take money out of those accounts once you get to a certain age. That age is currently 73. Now, what we want to do to mitigate that, and what we talk about when we build strategies, depending on where your income is, assuming you don't have pensions or annuities that add to your income over a certain bracket, could we find a way to reduce that pre-tax vehicle so that you're taking less out in the form of required distributions? And that would be through, looking at like the third vehicle, which would be the Roth or the after-tax bucket. Now, I'm seeing some nods in the room. I'm sure some are familiar with that. But that's an important piece to consider if the opportunity presents itself to say, okay, I know that I'm getting taxed dollar for dollar here. What can I do to reduce that bucket if I don't have other income that I can really use to move from the pre-tax bucket to the Roth? Not only is that an important tool for you, but it's an important tool for your legacy, because if you are able to move or convert assets from pre-tax to Roth, not only is that money never taxed after that, it will never be taxed for the next generation, the beneficiaries. So when you think about, again, hearing Joanne talk about preserving your legacy, preserving your net worth, that is a very compelling way to do it where the opportunity presents itself. Now, I know that's a lot of information. A very logical question would be, well, okay, so there's 3 buckets. What should I have in each one? And obviously that's a question that is different for everybody, but the opportunity is making sure that you're tapping into each vehicle based on where you stand from a bracket perspective and where you stand from your situation and your cash flow needs. And that, I think, is a really important thing to discern between those 3. So I'll pause there. How am I doing for time? Good. Any questions on any of that? I obviously, I want to talk more. I know top of mind, Joanne said, was Social Security. Nothing? Okay. Sure.
Could you explain IRMA?
Sure. So if your income, and actually I made a note here, so if your income is above a certain threshold, and I think some of you in this room may already be experiencing this, if your income is above a certain threshold, I'll check my notes. I have the number here. So if your income singly is above 97,000 and married is 194,000, you essentially get assessed a surcharge on your Medicare expense. So as you know, once you get to 65, Medicare Part B, that premium I think is around $170 a month right now, you get extra premiums tacked on that is basically subject to increasing based on prior years of income. And so how we think about how do we mitigate that is whether you have an income that's a certain level, could we keep you below that income so you don't have a higher surcharge on your Medicare premiums that you could incur for the next 10 years, depending on what your income looks like? Could we keep you, or can you try to stay underneath a certain tax bracket where capital gains are zero? Those are the important things to think about when you're kind of building this recreation of your paycheck. Sure thing. It does. Yeah, it does. So that.
Yeah, so I just want to know if the cap included RMDs. Okay.
It absolutely does, because that is earned income. So the question was, so a lot of the folks in the room, I would gather to say, are currently or preparing to receive required minimum distributions. And maybe just as a refresher there, and then I'll answer your question. Required minimum distributions, when you turn 73, the government makes you take a distribution from your pre-tax assets, makes you do it. And the logic is essentially that money has never been taxed. It went in pre-tax, it's grown tax deferred. The government has never gotten a cent of that money. When you turn to 73, whether you need it or not, that money has to come out, and that amount is approximately sounds oddly specific, 3.6% of the year-end balance of that account before you turn age 73. So let's just say you turn 73 on Jan 2nd. The year-end balance the year before, that is what the calculation will be based on, what has to come out. And if there is a significant amount in that pre-tax IRA, 401k, that's a big number. You can do quick math to say all that money will be tacked onto my income, which will generate a surcharge for Medicare, which will increase my Social Security taxation, and it just snowballs in certain ways.
What happens, and I'm sure many people here, they own their houses, if they sell their house and have a huge profit, is there a way around that, or you'd get killed?
It's a great question. So the short answer is in a lot of ways you're going to take it on the chin, but there is a way to offset it. So the rough high level there is you can exclude per person, married couples can be each $250,000 in your gain. Now that might be above that if you've been in your house for 30 plus years, but you can then add to that or reduce the amount that you pay in taxes by the improvements you've done in the house. So you can do what's called bumping up your basis. And essentially that means, rough math is, let's just say you bought your house for $100,000, you sell it for $1 million. If you're married, you can exclude $500,000 of that. Then what you can do to reduce that number more is you can account for the home improvements that have been done, which is going to basically take, so if you take $1 million minus $500,000, so now you're at 500. You bought for 100, so your gain is 400. If you did improvements that are over the 30 years, say it's 100,000, 200,000, that gain has now been condensed considerably. Is it still a capital gain? Absolutely, but it's not a capital gain of $900,000, which would put you in the top bracket.
No, I have a question with capital gains. Does it make a difference as to what tax bracket you're in, as far as the amount that you would have to pay in your capital gains?
It's a great question. And so the short answer is yes. Now, if we are talking short-term capital gains, meaning you buy something on Jan 1, you sell it within a year, it's subject to your tax bracket. So let's just say you're just collecting Social Security and you're in the 12% bracket. Once you hold an asset for more than a year, which I would think, based on the questions around a home sale that you've owned for 30 years, you are somewhat capped at a 15% federal capital gains rate unless that income bumps you into the higher capital gains bracket, which I don't have the exact math, but it's typically around $550,000 of taxable income, which a lot of you might be saying, well, I'm not going to hit that. But if you think about it, when you add in the home sale, you could get tacked on another 5% on capital gains if that home sale bumps you in. So that's where you would want to do some math and understand where you fall from an income perspective that year and what can you do to reduce that gain with your accountant. You know, all these conversations are done planning with, planners, but also with accountants that are going to kind of guide you on how you reduce your burden as much as possible. Does that help?
Yes, it helps. I didn't know, you were talking about as to what tax bracket you're in. That would play into whether your Social Security would be taxed.
Definitely. Big time. Yeah, because if you think about it, when you have income that, let's just say you have no other income except for Social Security, in that scenario, your Social Security is probably tax-free, which is wonderful. How your income continues to build, it could be investment income, it could be something else. As you get closer, when you take on more income through a required distribution, through taking something from a different bucket, every dollar adds to your Social Security taxation. And so that when you were to go to file your taxes and you say, well, wait a minute, I only took $10,000 out of my IRA, you might find that your taxable income is not only increased by that amount, but it's also increased by the additional Social Security taxation. So it's actually something that a lot of folks don't know, but it actually adds up, especially if you think, well, wait a minute, I don't really get what happened. I just cashed out an annuity and all of a sudden I have this huge tax bill. Those are considerations that you want to be making a really thoughtful decision on, because it erodes your long-term wealth. Sure thing. I cannot answer that question. That's a tax question. I am not a tax. I can give you thoughts. I mean, basically the thought is that if you look at your situation in aggregate and you do the rough math, say you have Social Security, say your wife has Social Security, you can pretty clearly see where that puts you from a bracket perspective. And you can say, okay, well, I'm going to be in the 22% on just my Social Security because it's higher than my wife's, but she's going to be in the lower bracket because hers is lower. In that scenario, it would make sense to file jointly, but there's no rule of thumb because everybody's situation is different, and it's more of a tax question.
That would be a perfect example that you should speak with your accountant or your CPA, because again, everything's particular to you, and tax law is very complicated.
It is, and we can. Sure thing. Go ahead.
Okay, getting back to selling a house. Okay, if I'm selling my house and I have a small mortgage still on it, does that affect my capital gains?
Yes. So we can talk more specifics about like where the how that works, but basically think about it as what you bought for and what you sold for. It's less about taxes on capital gains on I would say the answer to your question is you're going to have a smaller take home because you have to pay off your mortgage first. But from like a pure tax perspective, again, use that example, bought for 100, sell for $1 million. Even if you have a mortgage, the gain is still the gain. It's just like as if your house was a stock and you bought it for that same break point. Sure thing.
You talked about the Roth, did they get the same investment outcome as having a pre-tax?
Totally depends on how you have it allocated. So if you have an allocation that, say you wanted to put Roth dollars in and you never need these dollars because you're in great shape, you could make this a more risky account in that scenario because you say, I don't need this money. My kids might need this money, but they don't need it for another 10 years, 15, 20 years. But I think the return expectation is really based on the underlying mix between stocks, bonds, all of the different asset classes, which is it's tailored to what your income needs are.
Again, another time. So say you take your pre-tax income and you're switching it over to a Roth, so then I'm taxed on it.
Yep.
But it doesn't show as an income to change my taxation rate, does it?
Oh, it does. Oh, it absolutely does. You convert, the year that you convert those dollars, it's a hit. So we want to be thoughtful about what else do you have for assets. And again, this is not a blanket statement that it works for everybody. If you've got annuity income, if you've got pension income where you're already in a higher bracket on fixed income and there's nothing you can do about it, it might not make sense to say, yeah, I'm going to convert those dollars and pay 30% in taxes in aggregate. That trade-off, obviously it's everybody's decision to make. It might not make a lot of sense. It would be more of, okay, how am I being thoughtful about other asset classes or other vehicles that I can live off of so that I don't have to worry about getting bumped into that next bracket? Because it's not just a blanket statement, I'm going to convert money and it's going to be great. You take it on the chin in that year.
So how do you said that you can take RMDs that are coming out of your 401k and convert it into Roth?
Technically, so it would be an IRA to a Roth, and basically what you do is you pay the taxes in that year,
Yeah.
and then it's converted and becomes a Roth for it to grow tax-free forever. The concern, though, again, you want to be thoughtful about, think about the money that you convert as like an income or a bonus. So it'd be like if you converted like $50,000, pretty confidently I can say that that's going to put you in the next bracket. And this whole way of getting more tax-free money comes at a pretty steep expense. So that's why it comes from a tax perspective, I'm saying.
You're saying convert the entire 401k to the Roth.
Yeah, I would not do that.
Okay, so you're just saying just convert the RMD to the Roth.
Well, I think, again, it depends on everybody's situation. So I wouldn't say take your RMD, convert it, because that amount might bump you into the next bracket by itself. There's not a blanket statement because it depends on where you fall from a bracket perspective.
But the RMD is going into your what you're going to have to pay for taxes anyway. Right?
Yep. So then in that scenario, if you take the RMD, I would not convert it because then you're getting basically double taxed. Correct. We could chat after. We'll chat after. Sure.
Just a question back on the house for improvements.
Yep.
How far back? I mean, okay, so I choose a number, and honestly, it might not be exact, and I'm talking lots of years.
Correct.
I have bills,
Correct.
so how do you take that number and they just accept that number?
It's working with a good accountant. And the reason is you can, for all the years you've worked there, ideally you have proof and receipts, and as you mentioned, but all of those improvements can be shown, and then you basically have to show up if you were to get audited to say, I have $100,000 in improvements that I've done over the year. Here are the bills. So instead of my basis or what I bought for being 100, Now it's 200, which condenses how much you have to report in gains. Make sense?
But I'm sure over the years that, I don't have the paper.
Yeah, it's
So it's like taking a number out, this is what we know we spent.
it's hard.
Yes,
It's working with an accountant.
Is that opening up to be, have an audit? If you're dealing with, we started off with $1 million, homes, that's
Is it opening you up for an audit? I think it's working with the right accountant to say what's their process, what do they feel like you need to show in hand, and what do they think is best efforts for what that number should look like. Sure. Sure.
We can talk about that in a little bit. Thank you.
Yeah, I'll defer to the expert on that one when you're talking about the legal stuff.
Matt, one more. When you do a wrong and you pay taxes on it, it's paid forever. When your kids get it, there's no more taxation, right?
That's correct.
One tax and done.
One tax and done.
The other three that you're talking about.
The only stipulation is that the money will have to come out. The RMD rules have changed. If some of you might know the inherited rules, if you've inherited an account, now instead of being over the life of the children, it's done over a 10-year period. So the money will never be taxed again, but it will have to be withdrawn over 10 years. Correct.
There's a 10-year period. That's the Secure 2.0
What's
Act.
tax-free?
Yeah, that's the Secure 2.0 Act that everyone needs to pay attention when you inherit an IRA. If you're a beneficiary, it's something important to take light of. So if you're a beneficiary or an heir of an estate, it's very important that you're working with your CPA or accountant, because when they find out, the IRS finds out, they're going to want to see the appropriate K schedule on there that you've made additional funds, and they're going to want to figure out whether or not they need to tax you on it. So as you can see, what Matt is basically telling us is that, again, everyone's situation is individual, but also working with someone like Matt is very helpful, because most particularly in this room, the RMDs that you're getting, what is the best use of that funds moving forward? And since everyone's situation is different, if you have a diagnosis or you have a special needs child, those particular things are the things that we highlight, because we need to know that, because we might be taking a different road instead of just, the average vanilla. Are there any other questions for Matt?
on Social Security.
Sure.
Do you, which I did do, have tax? In other words, so you don't have the heavy tax.
Do you have it withheld?
Yeah, I recently came across somebody that doesn't withhold, and then they pay it all. Do you get penalized when you do something like that?
No, but you have to manage your cash flow that you're going to come up with. If you don't have a dime withheld, and you should be, because you're in a bracket that is not zero, that could be a significant number that I would be curious in everybody's thoughts in the room, but you're cutting a pretty significant check to the IRS because they haven't been withholding along the way for you.
I ask a question? One of the things that really worries me is I'm afraid that a lot of the laws are going to change. Like, for instance, all of a sudden Congress could start taxing the Roth IRA, so it's not really definite. Or, for instance, what if they, you think that they may do away with the capital gains deduction? I mean, that would change things drastically. Do you have any thoughts on that?
I have thoughts. I think what Joanne said, you have to stay on top of these laws because they change on a dime. I will say the one thing that we've talked about with clients is the conversion laws are actually subject to change at any point. So you could not be able to do this conversion on Jan 1 that you might be in a good shape to do. And again, the conversion is not a blanket statement. It is very much tailored to every individual, but it's something that allows you to kind of preserve things as you go. The other question, the laws.
Like the capital gains deduction, I'd hate to have that go away.
The IRS is not worried about the folks that have, those are for like the multi-millionaires, is where they're talking about taxing like unrealized gains, which would be a significant change. I would say that's not something that necessarily we're focusing on right now, because just like any law, just like any market event, until it plays out, the best thing you can do is not speculate. Sure. How are we doing on time, Joanne?
You're fine. Yes, we do. Thank you.
Thank you. This is really awakening. I thought I had things pretty well tied up. But
Sorry.
my question to you, and what I'm really hearing is, I should be talking about this with my kids that are going to inherit what I have, and they should pay the bill for this. In actuality, no, seriously. Why am I worrying about it? I'm not going to be here.
Yeah. So, and again, that will tie into kind of Joanne's plan around estate planning, making sure your documents are in place. I don't have any. Yeah, I don't have any other.
Speechless.
Yeah. Sure thing.
I have a question in relationship to your business. When you set up an account with an individual, how do you overlook that account, and what time period do you deal with those accounts? I mean, is it you set up the account and you go away and we have this account?
Yeah, it's a very.
The ones that evaluate it, who paid you to evaluate it?
It's a great question. I would say everybody's different, and you might see some folks that are in that shoes. Where we're a very niche group, where think of us as like a private practice. So we only help a certain number of individuals, and because of that, we really try to have everything be as hands-on as possible. So to answer your question, there's a very, very in-depth process to understand what are your goals, what are your income needs, what is your tax situation, what's your comfortability with risk. Not only your risk tolerance, but your time frame. When do you need these funds? Do you need them? And that is all going to be predicated by how you allocate the resources. But it is very much, to answer your question, not set it and forget it. You need to be looking at this at least quarterly to make sure that you're rebalancing, especially, some of you may follow the market. Outside of April, we've been on a very low volatility stretch, meaning the market's done very well. So what you should be doing is you should be rebalancing, trimming from what's done well, buying what's on sale, making sure that you're not overstretched, because that's going to make sure that when the market does get volatile, as we know it does, you're not overexposed.
You're not quite answering my question. My question is, since we're paying you to do this, how often would you evaluate, say, my account, if we had an account? Would that be on a yearly basis, or do you throw the responsibility on us? You kind of sounded like you were saying that I should be the one to continue looking.
No, quite the opposite. No, definitely not. We look at the market and we evaluate trends every single day. When we look at individual accounts, we typically rebalance quarterly.
Does that bounce against a spreadsheet that people fall into that particular category?
Everything's custom.
Evaluate those particular accounts and maybe not look at the rest of the accounts?
Let's talk after. I can give you a more specific. The answer is everybody's situation is different. There's no portfolio that looks the same as another one, because everybody's needs are different, right? You need different income needs and everything else. Oh, at a minimum quarterly. Yeah, at a minimum quarterly. Yeah, sorry, I thought I made that clear. Definitely at a minimum quarterly.
Does anyone want to hear about elder law, or do you still want Matt
Yeah,
to
sorry,
talk?
I don't want to take up. I should be able to stick around after if there's specific questions. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. You got beaten up. Thank you, Matt. I really appreciate you being here, because a lot of the things that you talk about come over into the estate planning area. And as some of you know in this room, like Matt said, it's a process when we first take you on as clients, because we really need to know everything that's going on. We need to know, do you own your house individually or is it in a trust? If it's in a trust, who are the beneficiaries? And are those beneficiaries alive? Are those beneficiaries still the beneficiaries you want to use? So I'm going to direct your attention to the handout that I gave. And since we're a little short on time, I was going to talk about trusts first, and then I'll take questions. How's that sound? Okay? So let's go back to the revocable trust. The revocable trust is the trust that you still have dominion and control over all of the assets that are in the trust. Think of this piece of paper as the trust document. And the trust document are all the rules of the game. The trust document tells you what a trustee can do, what the grantor can do, what everyone can do that's involved with this document. If what they're trying to do is not written in this document, then they can't do it, okay? So when we look at a revocable trust, I myself, I'm the trustee of this trust during my lifetime, my husband and I. We own our house in Walpole within this trust. We are allowed to act as trustees as long as we're alive and as long as we have all of our marbles, okay? So as long as you're not deceased and as long as you have capacity. This is the trust document. It states that if one of us should pass, the other can act individually as a trustee. Okay, so that sounds pretty good there. But let's say my husband passes first, which I usually have the husband die in my hypotheticals first, so don't anyone be offended by that. But he passes first, and then I'm alive still, but I lose my marbles. The benefit of having a trust, whether it's for real estate or other assets, is your trustee can immediately step up. We've now avoided going to court to have someone appointed to speak for you. Someone that speaks for you is called a fiduciary. These are the people that you appoint under these particular documents to speak for you when you can't be heard, whether you're incapacitated or whether you've deceased. So we've accomplished something right there. We have the people speaking for you named within this trust. What we've also accomplished with this revocable trust is we're going to avoid probate. Because Doug and I own our house as husband and wife tenants by the entirety. That means that there's rights of survivorship. So when he dies before me, his 50% undivided interest immediately goes to me the second he dies. That's what rights of survivorship is. You can hold banking checking accounts, you can hold investment accounts, you can hold real estate with rights of survivorship. But guess what? Now what we did is we created a probate asset for me. What's a probate asset? A probate asset is an asset that has nowhere to go. So when Doug was alive, his 50% interest immediately went over to me. It had somewhere to go. So we avoided probate, that dreaded word that everybody hears, but it's really not that bad. Probate court is a court in our jurisdiction that has jurisdiction over dead people's things that have nowhere to go. So if you have accounts, make sure you have a joint tenant. If you have a trust, make sure it's in the name of the trust, okay? So accomplished two things so far with a revocable trust. We've named our fiduciaries and we've also avoided probate. The other thing that we want to remember about a revocable trust is that it's a two-layer trust. I like visual stuff. I learned that way. Learned very well that way. Think of another layer under here. The layer of the revocable trust is your equity interest in everything that you've owned. Your home, lovely lady in the back that asked about realty trusts, your home is owned individually by you right now. We convey that property over into the trust. You can still mortgage it, you can still sell it, you can rent it, you can do anything you want because you still have the equity interest in this property, okay? Any questions on that? Okay, revocable means you can amend it, you can change it, you can do anything you want. Let's say I left my house to my niece, Alice. Well, Alice didn't bring me a Christmas gift, so guess what? She's out the door. So I'm going to put Alyssa now. I can change it whenever I want to as long as I have capacity. Let's move to the irrevocable trust. The irrevocable trust is this piece of paper, and guess what? It's flat. It does not have that second underlining layer of the value of the equity for me anymore. What I've done is I've taken my home and I have gifted it. What does it mean that I gifted it? That irrevocable trust didn't pay me fair market value for my home. So when I gift my home to that irrevocable trust, we're going to talk about capital gains in a minute because that's a primary thing to think about. But when I've gifted it and I've sent it over here, and I know everybody knows the terminology on this one, we get through the 5-year look-back period, the 60-month period. Once we get past 5 years, this will not be includable in my estate upon my date of death for estate taxes, Massachusetts and federal. It won't be included also while I'm alive in my estate if I am looking for help from the government, Mass Health, for health care reasons. Okay? Any questions on those two things? Yes. I love that idea because what I tell my clients is we do a little bit more work right now. And well, you're the one that wants to charge your children though, so maybe you don't want to do this. But we do a little bit more work right now and we make it easier for the people that you're leaving behind. Okay, so trusts are very important because you can do that. The only asset that you cannot change the ownership of the asset of is an IRA. An IRA is an individual retirement account. Okay, that's what the IRS code calls it, IRA. An individual has to own it. And Matt can talk about this probably at another time, that if it goes to a trust, like a beneficiary, it's going to be a little bit of a higher tax. But if you have named individuals as your beneficiaries, then we get into, it goes to the individuals, who have to be adults over the age of 18, and then they have a 10-year period to use those funds. And within that 10-year period, each year they have to use 1/10 of those funds. Okay, so that's a whole nother conversation. But the IRA is the only thing that you cannot change the ownership. If anyone ever tells you that, be like, nope, I'm not doing that. Because if you change the ownership of an IRA, it's a taxable event. So we don't want that to happen. Yes, sir.
Isn't it, if you have a irrevocable trust, you are putting your house in danger, and you better make sure you trust your children, or your children don't get in any legal trouble, or you could lose the house and lose everything.
Wow, that was a lot of stuff right in that one statement. So your house isn't in danger per se if it's in an irrevocable trust. A well-drafted irrevocable trust will still give you the opportunity to stay within the home. You're not given a possessory value, for instance, like a life estate. Some people may have life estates on their properties, but you are allowed to stay in the home and you're going to pay all the bills too. So I think your reference to trouble with the kids is that the kids are actually the ultimate beneficiaries. But guess what? That trust doesn't cease or expire until your date of death, and then it goes to your beneficiaries.
But even in an irrevocable trust, isn't the house your children's house or whoever you select?
But not while you're alive, though.
That's good. I appreciate it.
Yes, not while you're alive. There's a contingency to it that they don't get the value of the home until your date of death. So you get to stay there and pay all the bills. Any other questions?
I do have a question about that. Irrevocable. Suppose you do have an irrevocable trust, but for one reason or another, your child has some financial problems. And can they put a lien on your property if they,
I know your question. Yeah. So I'll transcribe the question a little bit. So there's a hindrance when you gift things. So when you gift the house to the irrevocable trust, anyone that has a beneficial interest in that property, is it subject to creditors? And a creditor could be anyone. If you get into a car accident, you hurt someone, and there's a court order against you. Or guess what? Spouses are creditors too if your child goes through a divorce rather. So what the question is could they, for her beneficiaries, I'll use you as a hypothetical, for her beneficiaries upon her date of death who are going to inherit that home under the irrevocable trust, could creditors have the knowledge that they have a potential beneficiary there, put the order against that home? I would suspect the answer is yes, because anyone can record anything they want at the Registry of Deeds, provided that it's signed by a notary. It's acknowledged by a notary. But it might be a little bit deeper of a question too, because if it's a home insurance type thing, home insurance will always protect and defend your claim against you. But that's why we also get into the declaration of homestead, to stop that creditor from trying to sell the property, like a foreclosure, to satisfy the debt. Okay? So that's like a particular situation too that is not too common, but we can talk about it too. Yes?
But if you have an irrevocable trust,
I can repeat it.
and you're still alive, I mean, it's in my 4 kids' name,
Yes.
but I'm still alive. So any debt that anybody goes after them, they can't get in there because I'm still alive, right?
Not while you're alive. That is correct. But remember that contingency upon your death. Now, you 4 kids, 25% each. Now we'll pick on the oldest one. He has a creditor coming after him, and they can come after the 25% value in that home. Yes. So not until you're dead. So you don't have to worry about it then. You're in the clear. You're in the clear. So some people will ask about gifting, and, as a way to minimize an estate tax consequence, or possibly helping a child purchase a home or something like that. But you have to remember, when you gift, I'm going to give you $100,000. You're welcome. So that's no longer my money. This is now her money, and it's subject to her creditors. So I get questions from clients. How about I have Matt hold $10,000 for me, and if I need it, he'll give it to me? I'm like, yeah, if a creditor doesn't get it first. Okay? Yes, sir.
The homestead, shouldn't the homestead act be exercised at the same time as you do an irrevocable trust? Because that protects you.
Yeah, so the funny thing about an irrevocable trust is nobody really owns it while she's alive. So you can't protect from a creditor if nobody really owns it until the contingency of her death. And a homestead can only be filed on your primary principal residence. So her 4 children, that's not their, most likely, not their primary principal residence.
And that doesn't carry over if you should buy a second house there.
No second house. It's only your primary principal residence. I'll talk about the homestead in a second, but how do you claim your primary principal residence? Your tax returns and your driver's license tells us where you live. Okay? So the homestead is a document that you file at the Registry of Deeds in the county that you live in, and it's to protect your equity interest in the property, so the value of a home, less any mortgages or anything, against involuntary lien holders. So remember, it's involuntary. If you go to a bank and you say, hi, I have to borrow $200,000, I want a new kitchen, they're going to say, great, we'll give you the money, but you have to sign a mortgage. It will not protect you against that voluntary lien that you put on yourself. But let's go back to the car accident. You're in a car accident. Unfortunately, you're found negligent. They get a judgment against you. They can take that judgment, put it against the house. But the homestead, again, your insurance company, your homeowner's insurance will defend the claim. But the homestead's like a bootstrap theory. It protects your equity interest because it says those creditors can't force you to sell your house in order to satisfy that debt. And if you're over the age of 62, which is elder in Massachusetts, and your spouse is still alive and you're both over the age of 62, you get $1 million worth of equity protection, which is nice because the value of the homes have gone up in this particular area. Yes, Jackie. Oh, thank you. So Jackie's question is whether or not you have to update your homestead on record. So we did have an amendment to the homestead a while ago now. So if I look at, if I'm doing somebody's closing or I'm helping them with their estate plan, I do look at the homestead to see if it's up to date. But we always draft and file a new homestead if we're now claiming the homestead under another statute. For instance, if someone has, come to the age of 62, now we can claim it under the elder statute. Or if you're moving your home into a realty trust, because remember, you can't have a homestead for an irrevocable trust, the flat guy, only for the two-tiered guy, because it's your primary principal residence. In that particular case, we now have to file it under a trustee of a trust. And if you're over the age of 62, we're also going to file it under that statute. So, people are like, oh, I don't need a homestead. And I'm like, well, you know what? It's really not that expensive to do. And it'll basically tell the creditor and keep them away while you still own that primary principal residence. Okay? If it was 25 years ago, I want you to do a new one because we've had an amendment and we want to claim it under the new statute. Why? Because we don't want to give a creditor a reason to fight that your homestead's ineffective. You're welcome. Yes.
My youngest daughter does live with me, so it is her home. When I lost my husband, I didn't want to be alone. She agreed to live with me.
Yep, but during her lifetime, she doesn't have ownership interest in it.
No, so she still is one of the four when I'm not here.
Yep,
She's not anything better because she's lived here. You know what I'm saying?
correct.
Okay.
You might treat her a little better. Any other questions on, yep? I can grab it. Do this one first.
You said you should put everything in a trust. And when you becomes a irrevocable trust, do you have no control over your accounts? So how do you say you still live in your home? How do you pay the bills? How do you take care of that?
Revocable trust.
But then you get into what about the look back?
Nope, that's only on the irrevocable.
yeah.
Let me clear it up really quick. Is it a trust question?
No, I just wanted to know who makes the definitive decision if you've lost your marbles? I mean,
Oh, I'll get to that next. That's a great question. So let's just review the revocable and irrevocable again. So a revocable is a trust that you would have when you're still healthy and you still want to use your money and maybe you want to gift it or maybe you want to buy yourself a new car or go on a cruise around the world. That's revocable. You still have dominion and control on that second layer, that underneath layer, revocable. Revocable means you can change it, you can amend it, you can change your trustees, you can do anything what you want. Irrevocable is when you have no dominion and control. So that's when you don't want to use your money anymore. Okay, does that make sense?
It does. It just seems like I feel like people have been kind of saying, oh, it's time to go irrevocable.
Yes, and I agree with you. Probably, half of my clients over the age of 62, they say, can I come in? I want to do an irrevocable trust because I want to protect my house and make sure it goes to my kids. But then we have a process that we go through. And I tell my clients, I'll draft anything you want me to. But sometimes it's not a good product for them. Because especially in Walpole, is a prime example. If they bought the house in 1968 for $35,000, now they could sell it for $750,000, $800,000. They might need the equity in that property. Some of my clients can't even pay their real estate taxes. And then we have the problem that people want to sell their houses, but then it's like, where do you go? So we have a housing issue, as everyone knows. But in that particular case, we need to look to see if I take that, let's say my woman client's house and I move it into an irrevocable so that creditors can't get it, she can't either. So I say, you know what? I think you need to keep it in your own name, because if you have to tap into the equity because you need a new car or you need a new roof, it's probably not a good product for you. So an evaluation, again, the same thing. Intake form, we talk about assets, we talk about beneficiaries, we talk about a lot of stuff. And we figure out, you tell me what you want for your goal, and then we figure out, and Matt does the same thing with his clients, we figure out how we're going to get you to reach those goals. Okay? Good?
So, irrevocable, if you go to a nursing home, you're paying. A revocable, that doesn't count for the 60 months, right? Okay, well, one you count for 60 months. That's the irrevocable. But if you have a revocable trust, that doesn't count at all to those 60 months protection for a nursing home, correct?
That's absolutely correct. I do want to address the lady in the lovely green shirt over there. She asked, who determines whether or not you have capacity if you still have your marbles? Your primary care physician does, right? Because I can't do it. I didn't study medicine. So when we have conservatorships or guardianships, we present ourselves, and I present my client to the court, because what are we doing? We're asking the court to give us an order for someone to speak for someone else. So we have to say, why do you have to speak for them? Well, they can't make their own decisions anymore. So we go to the primary care physician, and they issue what's called a medical certificate. Okay, the medical certificate has to be presented to the court to state that this person does not have the capacity to make decisions for themselves. Okay, and that's a very important document in a lot of cases. So the question revolved around nursing homes. So let's talk about that for a second. You go to a nursing home, it's like renting an apartment or maybe a room for a month. You pay on the first of the month, and they let you stay till the end of the month. Then the next month, you pay in the first of the month, and you stay till the end of the month. And how are you paying? They're picking your pockets. Everyone that goes into a nursing home is a private pay patient when you first go in, unless you can prove that you need assistance through Mass Health Services. Okay? So we'll parlay it over to the trust. If you had a revocable trust, the two-layer trust, that equity interest in that second layer is really still in your pocket. It's just the ownership name is in the trust so that we can avoid probate. Got that? Okay. So if it's a revocable trust, when you go to a nursing home and you want to ask for Mass Health Services, you have to fill out the application. They're going to ask you for your statements of all your financial statements, your checking, your savings, your CDs, whatever it might be, for 5 years. That's what the 5-year look-back period is. They're going to see if you've been given money to people in anticipation of a debt, which is called a fraudulent conveyance. And we don't really want to do that, maybe. So they want to make sure that you haven't given money away, and then you're asking the state for help. What are the qualifications? Very basic qualifications. You can only have $2,000 in an account and a burial account for $1,500. So what does that mean? When we prepare for someone to file for Mass Health Services, we go backwards. We start the work a year and a half prior. Again, we're pulling in, wrapping our arms around all of the information. What are the assets that they have? We look at the assets. Can we do a spend down? Can we gift? What's going on here? Let's leave them at least 6 months to pay while they're in. Everybody's different, but you have to have a plan to become eligible for Mass Health Services. But it starts with $2,000 in the bank. Let's talk about if there's a house. If you have a primary principal residence, it can be protected. If you have a second home, forget it. It's going to have to be sold to pay for your care. A primary principal house can be saved from creditors 2 ways. If you have a healthy spouse at home, it has to be a spouse. It can't just be someone. We don't have common law marriage in Massachusetts. It has to be a real marriage certificate. Or If you have a child caregiver that's been living there for 2 years and a day, and it's not that they just stop by every day, it's that they live there, going back to proving residency, that their tax return and their driver's license, they have bills, utility bills, phone bills, that they have lived there for 2 years. So that is another way that the primary principal house can be saved. Okay? Any questions on that? Paula?
Well, when you sell it, I mean, when you sell it, can the state then go after that house? After the money?
I love you, Paula. You just came full circle. That's why we like trusts. Because if the house is in your own name, it goes through probate. And Massachusetts estate recovery, what are they looking for? They're looking for all the money that they gave out, whether it's Mass Health regular health insurance, which some people are on, or if it's Mass Health 24-hour care. As soon as someone passes, so obviously we write the wills, we also help with probate and trust administration. When we have a probate, which means a petition's being filed in the court, we immediately have to let the Division of Medical Assistance know about it. Why? Because then they're going to tell the estate recovery department, hey, we got one, we might be able to get something here. So then they calculate the money that they've given out to you during your lifetime, and that house that's owned individually now travels through probate, and they can take the value of that home to reimburse themselves. So what is my favorite thing to do is to move someone's house into a realty trust. Because again, we're accomplishing a lot of goals using those trusts. A lot of people, I think, have had bad experiences with trusts because, they'll listen to me and they're like, I don't want a trust. I don't want it, whether it's family fighting or whatever it is. But in my 25 years of practicing law, my experience is they are the key to your estate plan. Okay? Anything else? Yes, sir.
Last question.
You don't even need a microphone.
What I was thinking is that frankly, I have a revocable trust, and the reason why I came, and most of my assets are not in IRAs, but they're in things that have already been taxed. What can I do to protect my assets and my house? And I don't want a irrevocable trust. It doesn't seem like there's much I can do to protect the assets.
But you still want to use it, right?
I want to use it,
Yeah.
and I don't want to lose it.
So did you ever hear of you can't have your cake and eat it too? Bingo. You can't say, I'm going to use my pocket of money over here, but all you creditors go away. Can't do it.
So there isn't really too much I could do. Like I have the revocable trust, a house, and certain amount of assets, and so I still want to protect them the best I can, but I need them and I want them.
You're welcome. I think there was a question over here. Yes.
You can hear me, I think.
Well,
Is it on? So yeah, that raised another question. Why would I put a house into a realty trust versus the trust, the revocable trust?
A realty trust is a revocable trust.
Oh, done.
Yes. Yeah. So a realty trust, as the name states, normally holds real estate, and it has a schedule of beneficial interest. My clients that have investments, that's usually what we use it for. But if we create a family trust for you, I'm going to plunk that house right into the family trust. No need to have that extra layer. Yes, Linda. Oh. Federal? Yes. Absolutely. Well, Medicare, and I'm not sure if Matt is familiar with this part of Social Security. You know how you pay for your health care? You pay for Medicare through your Social Security that you get. So there is a formula, too, that they can come after for, but that I'm not too familiar with. So I'll get you the answer, though. Well, no, they're actually taking it while you're alive, right? Medicare. Medicare. Yep. Yes. Probate. Yep. No, because they're actually taking it from your Social Security during your lifetime. Right. Yep. Yes, Linda.
Well, I think you probably know what I'm going to ask you because I asked you.
It could be a lot of things.
No, but my concern is in that I think that everybody in the room has to pay attention to this. As much as they want to take things away from us, whatever they can, whatever dollar they can get, why are they not giving us some relief in the amount of money we may have in our account when we have to go to, Mass Health?
Why aren't they giving relief? You mean you want to
Why-
change the eligibility rules to get
No,
it?
I want them to let us keep more money. Like we can, $2,000. How much is $2,000
Well,
going to be?
that's for an individual person. Like I said, the eligibility is particular to each situation. If you were filing it and Ed had already passed on, they would be looking at it differently because there wouldn't be a healthy spouse at home. You would be an individual. And when you have a healthy spouse at home, they're allowed to keep a certain sum of money. And then there's a formula for the remainder of the money to be used. So it's not cut and dry like that. I apologize if it sounded like that, but that's the basis. But, only a certain amount can be secured also. And then one of the things too is, yes, the house is protected when there's a healthy spouse at home, but what if that healthy spouse ends up in a nursing home? Then ultimately the house gets sold to pay for the care.
I think we ought to reunite the great Panthers.
Good thing that wasn't on the mic, Linda. Yes.
You mentioned, that's okay. You mentioned
Yes. Yes.
I just want to say we've heard a lot about avoiding
Okay, so
taxes
the question
today.
was, it's a little bit of a mixed
And,
question. The
when
question was,
you
if you have a
pay your
child caregiver
taxes-
that's been there for 2 years and a day, and then you pass, can that child caregiver stay in the home? So there is a little bit of a formula for that, but ultimately, if that house goes to all the children, if they want to stay, they're going to have to pay off the other ones. Oh, if they inherited it, yes, absolutely. It's their home now. Still put it in a trust, because if I pass and I'm not married and my daughter's still living with me, but I'm in a nursing home, living with me as in she lives at my address, but I'm in a nursing home accruing costs, but it's only in my name, that house has nowhere to go when I die. So it travels through probate to make sure it goes to the appropriate heirs. So it would go to the estate recovery. Yeah, that's why a trust is important. Let's stay out of probate. Yes, or revocable. Let's call it a revocable, because there's different types of revocable trusts. Yes. The question is, if your house is in an irrevocable trust, do you need a realty trust? And the answer is no. But some people may have it, a realty trust at top, like think of like an umbrella, and then have beneficiaries of that, an irrevocable trust, maybe a sub-S corporation, or other things. So it depends upon the sophistication of your estate plan.
We have a question back here, Joanne.
Thank you.
But when you do pay your taxes, think of all the benefits that you get for your money, such as your COVID vaccine and your military and your fire department and your schools. Anyway, don't resent paying taxes. You get a lot of benefits for them.
Thank you for that comment.
And I had something unrelated.
So the
Sorry.
comment was to Don't be too disdained about paying taxes because it gives us other benefits like your COVID shot and money for veterans and so, which she's completely correct about. Yes.
I was just wondering because I've worked with people who have been in nursing homes in the past, and they had told me that basically all of their assets have been taken from them, given to the nursing home money until they were able to qualify for Mass Health. If someone's on, and I hate that that happens, if someone's on Mass Health and they still have a home and it's before that they go into a nursing home, how long does the government or the system in place look at that as being an expense that needs to be paid back, and how much would have to be paid back of that? Do you know by any chance?
So you're asking me for payback of the care that they received?
Yep, for Mass Health.
So it is limited to the amount of money that goes through probate. So if a house goes through probate and it's worth $500,000, the estate recovery could take that. If nothing goes through probate, there's less of a chance for estate recovery to get their hands on it.
Oh.
So we go back to why it's good to have a trust too.
Even with the reversible trust, that's the case as well?
Revocable, yes.
Revocable. Okay.
Yes, with the revocable.
Okay, so they can't. So you'll still have that asset essentially. So
Yeah, you still have an ownership in it, interest in it, which means that's an asset for your expenses, which means that you probably won't qualify for Mass Health Services unless there's an exception to protect it.
Right. I just get worried someday that like I'll work my whole life and all I want is like stability for my kids someday and like an asset that can go to them and to be divided in the highest level possible. And I just get afraid that that might be then I would probably start to worry at that point, like I'm alive, like I'm not thriving at this point once you go into a nursing home.
That's a great point.
And all of your money is being allocated to your care and you just want to give to your children.
Right, but you don't have the same goals as
Yeah.
some of my other friends
Yeah.
do here.
Yeah.
So when we develop
when
we develop a plan for you, we're going to develop a nice foundational plan that's good for 5 years, 10 years, 15 years down the road. My clients are like, when do I have to see you again? I'm like, you can visit me anytime. But, you know, if somebody dies, if somebody's born, if you win the lottery, if you file bankruptcy, if you retire, if your spouse dies, those are life events where you have to sit down and evaluate, is there anything that we need to change here? In your particular case, you're too young to tie everything up because you need your money to use it. You need your equity within your home. So once you start to build a little bit more equity and then you know, you're looking ahead, which I love is wonderful because some people don't keep that in mind. That's when you would make the decision as to, should I gift? Should I do this? Should I do that?
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
So it's kind of like an incremental thing, like the question about how often does Matt look at people's accounts?
Yeah.
Well, he's looking at people's accounts when the market goes up, when it goes low on a regular Tuesday, but he's also planning for their future at the same time.
Right.
All right, I'm going to take one more question and then we're going to wrap it up because we've gone a little over today.
Okay, my husband was in a nursing home. I paid for 9 months. After that, he got Mass Health. They could not touch my home because it was in my name and we filed separately all our lives. Okay. So that way the house was mine.
So this was a great hypothetical. Her husband was in a nursing home. They paid out of pocket for 9 months, right? Because when he first went in, they looked at all of your assets. She got to keep a certain amount. She got to keep the home. They paid out of pocket for 9 months. When that was spent down, he got Mass Health. He became eligible for Mass Health, and everything was good. And she kept the house. Oh, you're very welcome. Thank you all for coming, and enjoy the sun. Have a great afternoon.